Okay, so I did my research project on the transitioning climate of contemporary marijuana marketing in California. The reason I did this research is because marijuana was just recreationally legalized by Proposition 64. It went into effect on January 1st, 2018. It was voted on 2016 of November. So marijuana has been medically legal since 1996 with the passing of Proposition 215, and advertisements of marijuana have kind of been more for the purposes of to show the medical benefits. So for Proposition 64, I wanted to look at how marijuana is being advertised first by looking at whether the advertisements actively promoted marijuana or whether they went against it, because it was a topic that was voted on recently. So I looked at a sample of 20 marijuana advertisements in California from the time period of just before the vote was passed and up until April of 2018. And the advertisements were found by Google searches of anything from keywords that started with recreational marijuana, Proposition 64, yes on 64, no on 64, and California. So these were all requirements of the search. And the breakup is, as you can see right here, 18 were supportive of recreational marijuana or Proposition 64, and then 3 were in opposition. And then 1 advertisement was in opposition of just driving while under the influence of marijuana. So the importance of this study first looks at California is the most populated state in the United States with 38 million people. And with the passing of recreational marijuana, the California Department of Finance expects as much as $1 billion in tax revenues each year. So, and this actually could, the state's legal marijuana market is already at $2.7 billion, so it raises it by $1 billion a year. So this is a pretty large market that could generate a lot of taxes. So the 20 advertisements, which was the main focus of my study. And first I started by conducting a rhetorical analysis of all the 20 advertisements to look at if they were successful. So I looked at whether they applied or appealed to ethos, pathos, and logos, so ethics, emotions, and logic of the audience. So this was done to see first whether the ad was effective in trying to convey the message it was conveying or trying to convey. And the results were 19 successfully appealed to ethics. The only one that did not was an LA Times advertisement in support of Proposition 64. It was ineffective just because it kind of portrayed a drug user throughout the different periods of marijuana popularity. So the hippie movement, when it was passed in California in 1996, and then today. And it showed him like smoking bong and saying kind of strange things that didn't really appeal to an audience. So 16 successfully appealed to pathos and 15 successfully appealed to logos. And then after seeing if the advertisements were effective, I looked at a content analysis. So this was more to see whether or not the advertisements were pro or anti-marijuana legislation or whether or not they actively promoted. So the results of that showed that 12 advertisements of the 20 actively promoted marijuana, and 11 of the 12 were released after Proposition 64 was passed. And there was only 8 advertisements that did not actively promote marijuana. And I defined active promotion as if the ad promotes marijuana and its effects rather than specific retail products. So whether or not the companies releasing these advertisements were promoting a specific product, whether or not they talked about like the specific economic or social benefits of marijuana or whether they looked at a specific product. So in conclusion, seeing that 12 advertisements actively promoted marijuana, that meant that these advertisements did not look at the economic market. They did not try and compete with their like competitors, which is interesting because none of them tried to even like differentiate their products, which is kind of interesting in a capitalist society. They all simply promoted marijuana as a whole, saying things like, as seen in these advertisements, relax, it's legal, hello marijuana, goodbye hangover, hello marijuana, goodbye headache. And in this advertisement right here, you can't necessarily probably see it in the video, but there is two guys, a grandma, an African American person, someone and its dog saying play, it's legal, play with your dog, marijuana is legal. Didn't really make too much sense, but none of them were trying to say like, hey, our product is better than our competitors. Rather, they were just saying, use marijuana, consume it, get as much of it as you can, and that was pretty interesting to me. So kind of looking forward from this, marijuana is still illegal on the federal level, so that means that promoting a drug, a psychoactive drug, is illegal, and these companies are saying, you know, use marijuana, do it. And that's going to be kind of interesting to see how that plays out in the future as the restrictions on advertisements become more clear and defined. So that is everything.